Today's parsha is entitled Balak, and it's taken from the book of Numbers, chapters 22 through 25. But before I read the specific scriptures I'm going to be addressing, I want to leave this image up for you and let it sit in your unconscious for a while. Don't worry, it'll make sense in a few minutes. For the sake of time, I've written a few things down. In 1997, I graduated from high school at 17 years old. But because I was still technically a legal minor, I needed my parents to sign my contract to enlist into the U.S. Air Force. Because I was so young, I was also a bit naive. Combine that with the Air Force's reputation for being more of a technological branch of the military, I assumed I did not need to guarantee my job. So, I enlisted with an open contract. Upon completing basic training, I was assigned to a security forces unit, the only combat-related career field in the Air Force, which is not Special Forces. I intentionally didn't enlist into the Army or Marines because I didn't desire to be attached to their primary mission of direct combat engagement. However, because this was just a few years prior to 9/11, all branches of the military were on high alert, including the Air Force. So, honoring my contract, I went through advanced training for 3 months at the Security Forces Academy in San Antonio, Texas. There I became thoroughly proficient in the use of small arms like the M9 handgun, as well as large arms such as a 203 grenade launcher and what you see here, the M60 machine gun, as well as a number of other heavy weaponry. I was trained to work through sleep deprivation and inclement weather conditions, all of the fun stuff I thought I was avoiding by enlisting into the Air Force in the first place. In addition to studying combat tactics and strategies, I was trained in anti-terrorism. In fact, anti-terrorism became the primary mission of security forces leading up to and post 9/11. By the time I completed basic and advanced training, I had a little more than 3.5 years left in my contract, of which I spent the majority of the time up at Vandenberg Air Force Base just up the coast of California. During that time, I was securing high-priority resources, but I also was frequently sent to short-term upgrade training in the field for a few weeks out of the year. In fact, one of those trainings was part of the annual war game drills in South Korea, which have recently been halted as a result of President Trump's deal with North Korea. Of all the weapons, I was assigned the M60 machine gun. The M60 machine gun is nicknamed the Pig because of its bulky size and heavy weight. When setting up a combat defense perimeter, the M60 is placed first. Once the best vantage point is scouted out, the M60 is placed there, and all other weaponry is positioned around it. This is because the M60 has the most rapid firepower, the furthest range, as well as the largest caliber of ammunition in this scenario. Now, this is a very crude drawing that I've drawn up. It's not completely accurate, but I'm hoping it gets the point across what I'm trying to convey. Determining where to place the M60 will obviously depend on the specific terrain where the conflict is taking place. But the principle is the same. The M60 takes priority. Now, I'm not exactly how permitted I am to have these, but these are just a few rounds of the M60 that I was able to manage from fire practice on a shooting range, just to give you an idea of how big these actual bullets are. Keeping all of this in mind, let's take a look at today's parsha. Balak. Now, Balak was the king of Moab, and he felt threatened and intimidated by Israel passing through his land. So he was insistent on putting a curse on them. He summoned a prophet named Balaam. Interestingly, Balaam is considered one of the few Gentile, non-Jewish prophets who had actual direct contact with God. So we begin in Numbers chapter 22, verse 4. Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to Balaam, saying, "There is a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view, and it is settled next to me. Come then, put a curse upon this people for me, since they are too numerous for me. Perhaps I can thus defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed indeed, and he whom you curse is cursed." The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian, versed in divination, set out. They came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. Now, at first, Balaam is hesitant to do this. And there is the famous story of his talking donkey and the angel of the Lord appearing to him. But eventually Balaam is permitted to meet with Balak on one condition. He tells Balak, I can only say what God puts in my mouth. And so we pick up, skipping down to verse 41. In the morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamot Baal. From there, he could see a portion of the people. Now, because he could only say what God put in his mouth, he wound up blessing them instead of cursing them. And so when we skip down to chapter 23, verse 11 through 14, there's other commentary in here. But then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? Here, I brought you to damn my enemies, and instead you have blessed them. He replied, I can only repeat faithfully what the Lord puts in my mouth. Then Balak said to him, come with me to another place from which you can see them. You will see only a portion of them. You will not see all of them, and damn them for me from there. With that, he took him to Zedesophim on the summit of Pisgah. And as you can imagine, once again Balaam goes up to cast this curse, and instead of cursing them, he blesses them again. Verse 27 to 28. Then Balak said to Balaam, come now, I will take you to another place. Perhaps God will deem it right that you damn them for me from there. Balak took Balaam to the peak of Peor, which overlooks the wasteland. And again, for a third time, Balaam goes up to cast this curse. And instead of a curse, he winds up having a blessing. So how does this all tie into how I set this up? A few points to consider. First, the efficacy of heavy firepower. Now, we read that Balak had sent out the elders of Midian and Moab, who were versed in divination. So they were magicians or sorcerers, whatever label you want to give them. But he knew he couldn't use them. He needed, if you will, excuse the pun, the big guns. Balaam, specifically set for Balaam, for whom he blessed would be blessed, whom he cursed would be cursed. Secondly, the importance of a vantage point. The drawing that I showed had the M60 placed, and as I described, it had to be placed first. The importance of taking Balaam to one place, well, maybe that didn't work. He scouted out another place. That didn't work. A third place. That didn't work. And lastly, but most importantly, the correlation between physical and spiritual warfare. There is an ongoing battle for your soul. If you don't believe that there is an active spiritual warfare going on, you're kidding yourself. I personally think you're a bit delusional. It didn't stop there after the curses. In fact, it's constant. In this same portion, in this same part of Scripture, in chapter 25, what happens? While Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women who invited the people to the sacrifices for their God. The people partook of them and worshiped that God. No sooner does God protect Israel, instead of allowing the curse to happen, he blesses them. Immediately after that, they by choice succumb to this demonic action. Just within this same portion. So I'll leave you with this. There's a few verses in the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, to consider. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 through 9. Be of sober spirit. Be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Ephesians chapter 6:11. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. By the grace of God go I. I don't exclude myself in this. May he protect you and guide you. Shabbat shalom.